What is happening, my friend?
Hey, happy, not Tuesday.
No, I don't even know what day it is, where we are, but good to see you as always.
And good to see you too. So, did we actually miss a week for this podcast?
We missed a week. So,
Okay.
lest anybody think that you're going crazy by your podcast feed, yeah, it seems like longer than a week, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and really, I unless we miss one, which has almost never happened, we've done them on different days, but we fully missed the whole week because it just got so much stuff going on last week. We just had to surrender and say, hey, no time. Our real lives got in the way.
Yeah.
So,
The only other time that happened, I think, was last year around Thanksgiving.
did we miss a week? That sounds
I think
right.
so.
Yeah. So, our apologies to, I did hear from some of our loyal listeners, what the hell is going on? Where are you guys?
That part makes you feel bad. Like, we've tried every week to deliver, new and original content, and we appreciate the feedback and to the loyal listeners, but we couldn't pull it off last week. So we apologize, but we're back and
there's plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. I don't see any disruptions in the foreseeable future. And if we have to pick up the pace, we'll do so.
Yes. So, what's on your mind?
Well,
Ready?
I mean, we're just preparing for a nice leisurely chat today, but we have you situated here in the studio with all of your...
There should be no interruptions.
Let's hope not, but I don't know, man. Like you said, there's no shortage of shit going on, but I mean, the stuff that I was, kind of watching this week was... what's the deal with the debt ceiling? Is that the big thing that is supposed to happen by the end of this week?
This has happened so many times.
I know.
in recent politics that I should be an expert on it by now. But every time I hear it come up in the news, I kind of block it out because it's so depressing. And so here's my take on it currently right now. So. Right now, the Republicans spent the Trump administration, the last year of the Trump administration, running up, spending like drunken
sailors.
Drunken sailors,
phrase?
and now they don't want to authorize the Congress to pay for it. So that's my take on it. And then they think somehow that if they let this go to where the government has to shut down, that somehow is going to play well for them. I don't understand, really.
But how many times can you remember have we actually had a shutdown?
Well, one time that I remember where we actually had the shutdown, and there was some, I don't know if it was temporary.
Obama had one.
The full faith and credit of I think it was during Obama. The full faith and credit of the United States comes into question, and on an international basis, our credit gets downgraded, and it's catastrophic, really. And in a shutdown now would just with so many things going on, right, that need to be addressed and we need to continue addressing, it would be a catastrophe. And
I think government does need to shut down, though.
No, I'm
because,
sure you do.
Government forced all private businesses to shut down through COVID. So I think government at least needs 2 weeks to slow the spread of their spending.
I didn't see it coming. I should have, but I didn't see it
How
coming.
long was the Obama shutdown? Do you remember? It was like a week or something?
It was long enough for national parks to close, people to miss, government workers to miss paychecks and things like that.
Wasn't the big, I mean, I don't know how many years ago it's been. Over 4, of course, because we've already skipped over Trump, and it was sometime during Obama's years. But I seem to remember that we didn't really skip a beat. I didn't give 2 shits about the parks I couldn't go to. All the government services that we didn't have because people weren't getting paid.
Well,
I never saw a difference.
Didn't affect us because, we're in the top 20%.
But I mean, even services that the federal government would provide, I didn't notice anything.
That's the problem. I think that, so, I'm going to kind of put myself on the Republican side of this. What's their...
Wow, going there early today.
What's their thinking, right? What's their thinking? Because they're not, they are no longer doing anything because it's in the public interest.
That's it. That's
right.
the summary of the argument.
Right.
What they're doing is simply the opposite of what the Democrats want them to do.
Right. And so they must think that there's some political capital for them to gain by by causing a shutdown during a Democratic administration.
And what could that possibly be?
There were no shutdowns. Well, there was a shutdown, right? There was a shutdown in the first year of the Trump administration, if I remember right.
What was that one?
It was something, I can't remember what the red line was, but there was something that the Senate, the Republican controlled Senate, said, hey, we're gonna let the shutdown go unless this or that happens. I can't remember what the hell it was.
I don't remember either.
So anyway, it's all kind of bad. I mean, there's no upside. This is a mechanism that should be automatic. This should never be a political football, and it continues to be. And the reason why it never was in the past was that this was simply the authorization to pay for the money that the government has already spent. When you put in a political play that virtually stops the government from paying for things they've already spent the money on, it's harmful to the country, regardless of your political side.
Let's just do what the rallying cry. Let's just forgive the debt. Like student loan debt and everything.
Just print the money and pay the bill.
So what do you know about? Is it like what's the significance of this date of the shutdown? And does it happen annually? Is it during a 4-year presidential term, which wouldn't make sense?
I do think that there's been some kind of 3-year moratorium. It's just been automatic, but that stopped this year. So this is the first year that we've had to deal with it again, and of course, there's. So I guess right now the thing is, and you should like this, I think maybe because I think what McConnell is saying about this, why the Republicans are taking a stand, is that they feel that once they authorize raising the debt limit and paying for the bills from their past administration, that it's going to open the way for Democrats to pass the $3 trillion spending bill.
How does one relate to the other?
I don't think it does, but
he thinks it does.
Well, they think it's some kind of. They're taking some kind of moral stand. They don't give a shit about any of this when they're spending the money. But it's just, for me, it's getting to be old news, right? It's so predictable. When I first heard the first mention of impending government shutdown and battle over raising the debt limit, I knew this is where it was going to go, and it's going right where I thought it was going to go. So that is not interesting to me. That's boring.
But think about it. It is fucking crazy, right? Because you referred to it as paying for past debts.
Yeah.
But what we're really saying is what? There's some threshold that we have authorized the American government to reach as far as carrying a specific amount of debt. Uh-huh. And beyond that threshold needs to be approved, and therefore if it's not approved, we won't continue to pay the debt. Is that it?
Yeah, this is I'm not going to claim to have, I haven't really dug into it, so I'm a little light on the procedure. There appears to be two parts of it. What do you need to do to stop a government shutdown? And then separately is raising the debt ceiling. So they're not the same thing. So there's two different parts of it.
So why would the government shut down?
One can be done because that's the part where you're
funding the government.
Well, where you're paying for the stuff for the bills you've already incurred.
Right? So does that include things like salaries and benefits and pensions?
I guess. Yeah, I think everything. I mean, I think it's because what's going to happen is if the Congress is not authorized to pay the bills, then all that stops. I mean, the bill paying stops. There's no authorization, so federal employees don't get paid. I mean, many things happen, right? Loans default, interest payments, things, money that the U.S. has borrowed, and interest payments on those things stop.
So it's technically debt, right? Because you've identified and authorized a certain amount of debt.
Yeah.
And you're saying, hey, these are our liabilities. We have to pay it.
Right.
And then, but it's not really tied to income, right? It's not really tied to revenue as far as, do you have enough income to pay the debt? That's not really what this is, right?
No, I mean, that's not what this is supposed to be. This, first off, this was for quite a long time. I don't have the number at my fingertips, but I don't know. This has not always been the way, and this was what am I trying to say? This was just a routine procedural thing that happened in the Congress and the Senate.
And there was never historically any objections. It was a procedural thing that was done. We never, us normies, never knew about it, and the government carried on, and we all got to go to our national parks.
And during the Obama administration, during the complete obstructionist reign of Mitch McConnell and the Senate, the Republican-controlled Senate, after the first 2 years of Obama's presidency, they turned this routine procedural vote into a political football to use as a as a threat, to hold over the and it's just not even. I mean, it was never done before because it wasn't the right thing to do, right? You've already spent the money. There's no way that this has anything to do with controlling spending or anything like that, right? This is like, hey, we've already spent this money. We have bills to pay, and now we're not going to authorize paying those bills.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in this that don't make sense to me. It's one thing to say we've already incurred this. We've agreed to incur this debt. These are the liabilities that we show we're going to pay. Again, I always try to dumb it down and think about your household budget or your business.
Yeah.
If you have a significant loss in income in your household or your business, you could have all the debt in the world and say, hey, I know I owe this money, but I'm going to pick and choose what bills I'm going to pay. And it's not like you're saying you're not going to pay it. It's just, the check's in the mail. This one's going to be late, right?
It's okay if the Republicans don't like the level of spending that you see during a Democratic administration, and vice versa. I mean, none of the Democrats like the amount of money that Republicans spent, but it's like it's after the fact, right? And so,
but I like the phrase you used, political football, and it seems to me that how many more Pandora's boxes can we open, and to look for more opportunities to find political footballs to be obstructionists on both sides too. I mean, how much more is there to pick apart in the future to say, hey, well, these fuckers, made this issue a political football. We're going to find something else to make a political football, and it just goes back and forth. It's more like volleyball at some point, not football.
I mean, I think that's why I get a little bit. I mean, I'm not even that interested in the deep dive on this issue because that's all it is. I mean, you can do the deep dive, you can understand every procedural move involved in it to the max, and it still is it really just comes down to this is something that, especially Republicans, tend to use as a battering ram but it's too late, right? I mean, it's like you've already incurred these debts. So when you don't pay, if the U.S. defaults on its payments, that will destroy the economy.
But didn't that happen during the Obama shutdown? Didn't we effectively shut down and default on payments?
I don't know how. I can't.
That would have
remember
been
how far
what, 16 maybe 2016.
No, probably later than that because in 2016 we controlled both houses, right?
Well, when did Trump come in? 18?
Well, when did he come in? 12, right? Am I getting this wrong? How long? When did Obama's 8 years start?
Well, it started in 09, January of 09.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
but then Trump was in by what, 18?
Well,
fuck, I'm already starting to forget you.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. Okay, so Obama won the 2008 presidential election.
Came in
took
January.
office in January of 2009.
Yeah.
Lost in the 2010 midterms. Lost the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Or the House, lost the House, and then some point after that, and I can't remember when, lost the Senate too. So I got to think it had to be after that because there never would have been a shutdown while the Democrats controlled.
So that would be 12 or 13.
Yeah. So,
but still, so the question is, did we actually default on payments?
My memory is that there were delays for sure, right? And that there was a downgrading of the credit for the United States on the international scene.
That's kind of good, right? How can you build back better if you don't have a dip at some point?
Oh my God. So I guess my thing is that this unfortunately is such a, and this is just a reoccurring self-inflicted wound that we're doing to ourselves.
But why do we? Yeah, right. We are doing that to ourselves. Yeah. Why is that even a thing? Like, why is this? I don't get it.
Well, because at some point the Republican-controlled Senate decided that they were going to use this.
But it's even bigger than that, right? It's not really the Republicans' fault. This exists for them to pick apart and use as a tool to do what they're doing. But it's there, right? Why can't we change this process to where this doesn't happen?
I think if the majorities were bigger in the House and the Senate for the Democrats, they would be changed, right? So, I mean, I think that, right now, you can't. It's really been kind of an interesting. What has this been? 8 months now or something?
With Uncle Joe?
Yeah, and the majorities in the two houses are so slim that it's just a different kind of politics, right? And so. I would think you'd be happy with everything, that these very slim majorities in the two houses are really holding Democrats back from fully realizing their agenda.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the big stuff is infrastructure, all the spending bills, taxes, which is looming, as well.
There's a what is it? $1 billion infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure plan. I think
billion or a trillion?
A trillion, I think.
Yeah, I think it's
billion. Doesn't even pay. Doesn't even
keep the parks open.
Yeah, it doesn't pay for the coffee cart at the
White House.
Yeah. So $1 billion infrastructure, bipartisan, that should happen. Everybody's pretty much agreement on that. And then there's a $3 trillion spending package that would follow suit, which can theoretically be pushed through on reconciliation if the Democrats can get every Democrat.
Which they're not, right? That's kind of what I'm reading, is that maybe they don't have the support amongst themselves that they thought. Like that bill, as we've been reading, is in jeopardy.
Well, some Democrats, that Manchin, and I forget the names now, that are typically, that are in more red, where the states are a little more red than they are blue. They have to be careful what they allow themselves to be in support of. And Manchin, finds himself this puts him in a place of political power that normally would not be the case, right? And so he is, he's flexing the muscle from that position. Once if these plans go through, so here's what I'm hearing on the political analysis right now.
Where are you hearing this? Rachel Maddow? Who's giving you this incredible inside information?
Giving me a list everywhere I heard it. So what I'm hearing is that if I get this straight from Kamala Harris, she calls me, tells me the thing. If the $1 billion infrastructure or the $3 trillion spending package for all the other programs, if these things fail, that will signal probably the end of the Biden administration's legislative agenda. That from that point on, that what they're saying is that in this 2-year window before the midterms, if this doesn't get accomplished one way or the other, I don't think anybody's saying it has to be that the numbers couldn't change some, but they have to be substantially what they are now as far as the amount of spending to get these. Represents they put everything on the Biden agenda into these two.
What are they,
bills.
Quitters if they don't get it passed? What the fuck's wrong with them?
Well, what they're saying is that's going to the effect of that will cause the Democrats to really get slammed in the midterms, and then that will really be the end of it. That if they take back the Senate or the House, one or the other or both, that will be the end of the Biden legislative agenda, and that could start a downhill.
Don't they have another year? before that happens?
They do, but they're saying, but let's say that.
Well, don't give up, bunch of pussies. Get back to work.
They're working on it, man. So I don't think anybody's given up, but it's not coming easy, so we'll have to see, right? And, I mean, possibly one of the motivating factors for McConnell and these asshats to pull this government shutdown business is because they see it coming. I mean, I think they think that if Biden gets these spending bills through, one way or the other, it doesn't. I mean, originally, right, for the first 8 months and prior to the election, we heard a lot about bipartisan. And I, frankly, personally, and if anybody that disagrees with me, feel free. I think they've made a valiant effort to try to bring bipartisan support for all of these projects, right? And
I think that's true, and that's one of the areas that I give Biden credit, and I go back to his statements that he made, upon his election and his inauguration, that he's going to be the president for all people. I mean, he's going to take his same bad ideas and try to make both sides cooperate and come to an agreement. But he is trying. I give him credit for that.
He's trying. I am, slowly but surely losing confidence that it will actually happen.
But you don't fault Biden for that.
No, I don't. I think that, unfortunately, the politics are so polarized and the current state of the Republican Party is so effed up that they're just, I mean, they can't, there's just no way that I see them reaching out and taking this opportunity to work in a bipartisan fashion for the good of the country. I just don't see it. I mean, they only seem to have one playbook, and that's just complete and total obstruction. And, we've had, I mean, that was all my complaint with all of the Supreme Court stuff and the way McConnell ran the Republican-controlled Senate in regards to that, the way he fucked over Obama on the Supreme Court.
And that was more the opposite. It was less obstruction and more just railroading shit through.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how I feel about the whole filibuster business one way or the other. I mean, it all flips back and forth, right? Some things that are bad for one side now, when things flip, and they will eventually, as far as who's in control of either house, then it'll be bad for the other side. So, getting rid of the filibuster now so you can push everything through on a simple majority would be great now, and I think there's probably plenty of Democrats that think that the programs that are at stake are important enough to pull that switch.
But like you're saying, at some point in the future, whenever that is, are you willing to sacrifice decisions for a simple majority when the shoe's on the other foot?
Here's what I'm more afraid of than anything is that one of these old codgers in the Senate, I don't know all their names, pops off. Right, and then that's the end of the Democratic majority, the end of the ability
that can all be solved with term limits, which you refuse to get on board with.
Not on board yet with the term limits for legislators. We already have them for the president,
or age limits. God, I mean that just makes sense to me.
Age limits. Well, I mean, I think those are things, and Supreme Court term limits, right?
Yeah, all of it. People are living longer. I mean, that's true. Some people who are still with it in their 80s or 90s, but I mean, goddamn.
Do I?
I don't know. My father-in-law at his business on his company's board, he's got like two people in their 90s.
Really?
Two board members in their 90s.
Why?
I don't know.
Knowledge? Are they
guess.
Sharp? I know one person in their early pushing mid 90s now that seems sharp as a tack, right? And I just recently have seen her twice since the pandemic thing kind of calmed down a little bit. So went the whole time, like whatever it was, a year and a half, where the function that I used to see her at was off because of the pandemic. So when I knew that was going to happen again, and I'm like, oh my God, how is she going to be when I see her? She was, and so she's unchanged as far as I can tell.
How old is she?
She's like 94.
Is this person like, she's with it and she's sharp for 94, but how connected is she to things in 2021?
Seem pretty connected.
Like,
right?
does she use an iPhone? Can she use a computer?
Apparently so. She has an iPhone.
That's good.
Yeah, and I can contrast her with people I know in their 80s that are so. But
see, that's the thing.
She doesn't have dementia or those kind of chronic things, right?
But let's say you're totally healthy and you have a sharp mind and you can have a conversation. But how connected are they to the needs of the times? And that's really what I think about.
Yeah, and she seems that's the difference, right? It's like frankly, my mother-in-law has, is getting her dementia is pretty advanced, and so.
And how old is she?
88, and so, she's just really. I mean, it's like she's not in this decade, and so things that when there's any discussion about what a house costs, her common response would be, "Oh, come on now." You say, well, this house is worth $1.5 million. Oh, come on now.
Well, I mean, who could blame her for that, especially with inflation the way we see it in California?
Right, but there's
this fucking little shanty over here is $1.5 million.
Well, I get the reaction.
And you're going to be outbid.
But she honestly, in her mind, she thinks that $1.5 million house should be $300,000. So, and maybe, and I don't even know about that, right?
She's probably right.
Well, I mean, I get it but when you say connected, right? That's, the person I know in their 90s, I don't think would have that kind of reaction. Oh yeah, I know. But, that's part of the dementia, right? New information just really doesn't stick, right?
Well, and even at 88, you said?
Yeah.
That's still, I think, well past the life expectancy for women in
truly borrowed time.
It is, right? But that's why I always say like a Bernie Sanders or even a Mitch McConnell. I mean, these fucking guys, why young people? Bernie in particular, right? He had a lot of young people stood behind him and wanted him to be president both times. I just never understood that. Like, why when you're young and you think that the world is fucked up and things in government are broken and we need change, why you think a guy in his late 70s is the right guy to fix it?
70s, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, on both sides of that, I mean, Trump was in his 70s and this shit began.
To me, that was just a celebrity infatuation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that age has been the determining factor. I mean,
and Trump doesn't look as old because he bleaches and tans and he's got
he looks ridiculous to me.
He looks bad now.
Oh my God.
I mean, not that he ever looked good, but he never looked. I don't think he looked his age.
When you see Trump, typically when you see Trump on TV now, they're old clips, right? From
he's old news.
The last 4 years, right? Or last 5 years. And so you're just not seeing many new clips of him. So when they want to say something about Trump, they put up clips from, last year before the election. It's funny. I've seen but I mean, and anybody can take a bad photo. So I have seen a couple of bad photos, like on an internet browser or something, like on MSN or whatever it is, Bing or something. You see they got news pictures and stuff, and I've seen a couple of very unflattering pictures, but that could have happened at any time.
Do you have a good side or a bad side when you take photos?
It's all bad.
Remember that one time I took a picture of you with that app that makes you look younger? And I turned you into a little prepubescent boy.
Yeah, didn't like
that looked pretty good.
It looked like my 12-year-old school picture. So sick. And then I have the Baldify app, which is still pretty freaky, right? So that's an app where you can take anybody with hair, and then this app takes their hair away.
Well, remember even there was a period of time before I think Trump was running, and there was a Trump app. Maybe there still is, where you could put Trump hair on people.
Yeah,
I think I put it on you.
Yeah, but the funny ones are when they put it on a dog. That's when it really looks
or little
right.
babies,
because it really makes them look just like them.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the fact that Trump still appears to be the head of the Republican Party?
Well, you say that, and I know you're not the only one saying that,
right.
But I just
you don't think so?
I don't think so. I don't know what that does to suggest that. Like, why Republicans are still holding on to that guy. And if he has that big of an influence, I guess that's the only word I can think of, influence. If he somehow is still that relevant that he can influence the midterms, or he can influence and possibly, get a Republican elected in the next general election, I guess that's the reason why. I don't believe and I'm not, I don't know what you think, but I don't believe Trump thinks he himself is going to be reelected or reinstated. I know there are people saying that, but I don't think he thinks that.
Nobody believes, except for the jackass, the My Pillow guy.
Right.
That guy he recently moved the date for Trump's reinstatement up into October.
Yeah, is he like talking to Nostradamus or something?
I don't know. I think he's a little more on the periphery of the situation than the media would have you believe, right? I think the problem is that from what I can see, all currently serving elected Republican officials, right?
Well, like Senate and House people?
Certainly all federal office holders, right? As opposed to governors or, state senators or something. For sure, these federal office holders all appear to be completely controlled by not. They seem to all be deathly afraid of raising Trump's ire toward them and then being primaried by an even farther right-wing candidate supported by Trump. Now, we don't know currently, to be honest with you, whether that's a thing.
It can't be a thing.
Well,
it can't be.
It hasn't been much of a thing.
Because in the past, Trump's big, he likes to bark, right? He's like a dog. He, in his personal life and in his business, he threatens with lawsuits if you say bad shit about him. Didn't he sue somebody one time because they said he was less of a billionaire than he was? So that's his thing. He's a big bully. And even when he was president, he had Twitter and whatever else to just go on there and say, oh, this guy, he's a fuckhead. He crossed me. He's no longer in the Republican Party. But he doesn't have that outlet anymore.
Well, I think lawyers are going to be a little bit more careful in being involved in lawsuits with Donald Trump because, for instance, the gal they call Sidney Powell, the gal they call the Kraken, she is being hit with massive court costs and things and what's the other word, censures and so forth for several of the lawsuits that she represented him in regarding to overturning the election. And so
she's being brought into it.
Because here's the problem, right? So you go into court and say something that is patently untrue. That puts you in a very precarious position as a lawyer.
So she's his lawyer. She files a suit saying
the election was stolen. Right.
And then now she is personally liable?
As a lawyer, right? So these suits go, they lose, then there are court costs and things. And then she's being censured by federal judges for as a officer of the court for going into court and saying things that are patently untrue. As a lawyer, you are not allowed to go into a court and make statements that are known to be untrue. So
I don't know how I feel about that, though. Let me ask you this: do you think, like in a death penalty or a homicide case, a defense attorney, if they ever actually know if their client did it or not? And
I think so how does that apply to this?
Well, so here's where I'm going with this.
Because they're going to say my client is innocent.
Innocent. And let's say
I don't even know
know
if they ever say that. Do they say that? Does the attorney say that?
Well, they file the plea.
Present evidence. Well, again, so that would be the defendant making the plea, not the lawyer.
But if the attorney knows for certain if their client did it, and then they are representing them in their defense case, is that the same thing as saying false statements?
Well, I think if an attorney represented a murder suspect in a trial, and it could be proven that attorney knows, in fact, that the defendant is guilty, and if she makes statements in the court that he's not guilty, I think that could be a problem. So, but I don't think they make those kind of statements.
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how I feel about that.
I think they present evidence, and then you're supposed to, their job is to present evidence that is considered by the jury or the judge, whoever's making the decision. And I think if you go outside of those parameters, I think you're
Don't you think that
risk.
happens all the time though? Like you hear about trials where both the prosecution and the defense want to make sure certain evidence doesn't get admitted, or you can't hear from certain witnesses because obviously that's going to help or hurt their case. And I mean, I would just have to think, like, if you're the defense attorney, you're going to say something like, my client had an alibi. He couldn't have done this because he was over there. But if you know that the prosecution has evidence to say, no, he could have made that trip in that amount of time, is that the same thing as preaching a false statement?
I don't know. That's more a question for the junior attorney.
Well, I'm trying to think it through here, live on the air.
I kind of lost the trail of thought there, but
I mean, the point is, when you said that the Trump attorney. I mean, listen, if I need to restate it, the election wasn't stolen. There's no fraudulent election.
You've been clear about that.
Yeah. So, and this, of course, Trump is going to make those claims, and of course, there's going to have to be some attorney, I guess, procedurally, to go in there and make that statement on his behalf.
I mean, I think the problem is that. When you go into a court of law and you make false statements, you can be held accountable for it, and
isn't that called perjury?
Well, I think it is, right? So, I mean, if you're an officer of the court and you perjure yourself by making statements you know to be false, I think you're at risk for that.
But don't you think that's a very tough thing to prove?
I think it is. I think it can be. But, I mean, so here's the thing, right? You're an attorney and you think your criminal client is innocent of the charges. Whether he is or isn't, I don't think that's ever going to come back on you as the attorney, right? Your job is to present a vigorous defense and represent the best interests of your client in an adversarial courtroom situation. But when you're Sidney Powell and you're taking this big lie voting bullshit into court, you're at risk because you're the one promulgating the lies in the court of law. And you have a different responsibility than Joe Blow off the street, who is entitled to their opinion. But you go into court, file a lawsuit, right, and then go in and make false statements about things that happened during the election that can be proven that they were not the case.
And I agree with that in theory. And of course, as an attorney, you should be held to a higher standard. Although I have to just think that happens all the fucking time.
Well, I think that in the case of Donald Trump, so this little rabbit hole was really like, okay, is he going to continue to use lawsuits as a way to bully people?
That's his primary weapon.
I just heard about $100 million lawsuit that Trump filed that is widely considered to be frivolous and should be thrown out.
What was that one? I think I heard that number.
It was against reporters or something, right? I can't remember if it was one of the book authors. It's his goddamn niece.
Yeah, right. Her memoir or something.
Yeah. So that has no basis. That's going to get thrown out of court. And I would just think that the lawyers in that case, I have to handle it in a certain way. I mean, here's the thing. Sidney Powell is a fucking moron. And
I don't know Sidney Powell.
Yeah, she is a terrible lawyer, right? And she's incompetent, and
maybe she stepped all over. Did she win a lot? Maybe she's a good lawyer.
I don't think so. She stepped all over her dick in these court things. So
she stepped over her dick?
Yeah. And I mean that sincerely.
I guess that's appropriate in this day and age. She can identify as having a dick.
Yeah. They. Please refer to me as
Don't
they.
We have to have a thing here in California? Maybe it's now. Maybe we talked about this. I don't remember. But all government employees are required to identify their, what's the word? Their descriptor or pronoun, I think.
Yeah, pronoun.
In emails and all correspondence starting at a certain date.
Yeah. Well, everybody that listens to this knows ballpark how old I am, so it's no secret. I just successfully signed up for Medicare. And so you turn 65, you have a window. It's like a 3-month window, and it's on it's a month on the before, during, and after you turn 65. Some horse shit like that. Anyway, you want to sign up for Medicare, whether you have insurance or not. So the fact is, I don't need Medicare right now. I have insurance through my employer, but I need to sign up so that and then Medicare is broken into different parts. And so Part A is the one you want to sign up, because if you don't sign up for it and say you work till you're 68,
95 and you're a lawmaker.
Yeah. And then you try to sign up for it. The fact that you didn't register for it when you were 65 in that
How is
window,
that a thing? What's the point?
I don't know.
That?
There's a lifetime penalty. So
what the fuck are we doing with all these penalties?
Well, they want people.
The fuck is wrong with us?
They want people to register. I mean, they want people to sign up for it when they're supposed to. So anyway, penalties. In the process of doing that, there were some things that I needed to fill out. That, of course, this is government stuff, right? So they have to be. So I had something where I noticed there were some choices, right? Mr., he, she, they, whatever. And
anything wacky?
Well, I mean, all the wacky choices were there, right? How do you refer to a single person as they in a first person context?
You remember when everybody used to make fun of Prince when he like changed his name to what was it, a logo or something? What was his thing?
Yeah, he had a symbol.
A symbol, that's what I'm thinking of. But he was ahead of the times, you know, by being progressive with all that shit. But what if you decide on what your pronoun is now, and then you want to change it sometime in the future of your Medicare needs?
I guess you can do whatever you want, I guess.
When you go in and they're expecting, Mr. Watkins, and then you come in, you're like, we're all here. They've arrived.
I personally, and I don't want to offend anybody that is listening.
Why not?
That because I never really give a shit anyway. I just think that this is nonsense, right? I mean, I think you would. It's so stereotypical that anybody my age would say that this very progressive new way of looking at pronouns is nonsense. But I'm just going to say, because I'm never going to change my mind. It's never going to make sense to me. I think it's stupid. I think it is distracting for the people that this applies to, for the people that do want to identify or have issues with their sexual gender identification. I think that when you get to issues like, landblasting people for using, pronouns, nobody can understand this fucking shit.
And nobody can keep up.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Right. It's one thing to...
Only you care. The one that wants to be referred to as they or them.
And I get it, about inclusion and making sure everybody feels like they're welcomed, but it's gone over the deep end.
I don't know. Just pick one. I mean, if it's not he or she, then it should just be it, and we can move on. Okay,
I can't even keep up with all the various...
No, it's not something I'm going to try to keep up with either, so... I mean, if I was a social worker, or if I was actually part of some government administration, if I was part of the Biden administration or something like that, I'd have to make more of an effort, because when Kamala Harris uses the wrong pronoun or Joe Biden does, it's going to be a shit show, right?
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I mean. For those people that stuff applies to, it's distracting, and it adds to the discourse of why their shit is wrong. I'm not saying this.
Speaking
right.
of distracting, can we also get rid of the sign language person who's like on the news conferences is doing the sign language? It's so fucking distracting.
I constantly. So Debbie and I watch a lot of people from
your
podiums.
Heroes.
Yeah, a lot of our Democratic heroes talk from podiums, and especially in California, you're going to have the fucking sign language person there.
And they rotate them out in shifts. Like Newsom, he never shuts up. They got like 2 or 3 sign language people.
Bring them in because the arms are broke.
Oh my God. It's like harder than being a drummer for a rock band.
So I was scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or something, and I came across the clip of this gal doing sign language at some state function, where they found out afterwards well, I often tell Debbie, right, when we're watching this stuff, how do you know that that's just not all bullshit? How do you know she's just not making all that shit up? Who can tell?
Nobody can tell.
And Debbie will get me at me like, wow, stop it. That's so wrong, blah, blah, blah. And sorry, Deb, for that terrible impersonation. And then, so I saw this, and I think I probably sent it to her. She never replied. So, anyway, it's this news clip of this gal just making the shit up on purpose. She's a lifelong con artist, right? She got paid for doing it.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So, I probably have it on my phone, so I'll find it. Anyway, I thought it was hysterical because, yeah, in fact,
it looks legit, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, knowing that she's fake, it looks pretty fake.
Yeah, but you know now. But at the time, how many people did she fool?
It doesn't look so. The way she was doing it is she was making signs that were supposed to be like every syllable that was being spoke. That's not how it really happens, right? So anyway, I think that whole thing is just. I mean, for the people that need it, for deaf people, it's fantastic. That's
it reminds me of that scene in Star Wars in Return of the Jedi when C-3PO's telling the Ewoks about the history of the fucking Darth Vader, and he's got these big hand gestures and he's making these sounds, and
that's
right. Like, you don't know what the fuck he's saying. I don't speak Ewok.
That's right.
But it must be true.
Yeah.
You seem pretty credible.
Oh my God. So let's see. Is this our first podcast since the recall election?
I guess it might be.
Might be. So just because I don't think we've talked about this much. So just a quick review. He's still the governor. So
yeah, we predicted
failed.
that one.
Yeah, the recall failed. Larry Elder is not now and never will be an elected official in this state.
And what was the final thing? It was like a 65%.
Yeah, it was a trouncing, right? It was a trouncing.
It wasn't as close as I thought.
What this is going to, right, exactly, me either, to be honest with you. What this is going to translate to is
they're going to change that process.
He's going to go on. Well, I think, Travis, were you there? It was you and me talking with someone who has some kind of inside baseball
on the future.
And I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, I think we could look at what's the governor's name?
Newsom.
I think we can look at him maybe running for,
Senate.
With Senate is what we were talking about, which is good. I'd rather have him be a senator. He will work fine for what I'd like to see in the Senate, much better than being governor, because I won't have to hear him that much. And then I don't know exactly what that. I mean, I think we're looking at Democrats as governors in the state for
until we fall off into the ocean.
Until this is underwater.
Yeah, until we're Arizona Bay.
Yeah.
And I think I alluded to this the last time we podcasted, and I said I hadn't filled out my ballot, but I did.
Did you get it in?
I did. I got it in, and then but you were talking about, what'd you call it, ballot harvesting, where you had 3 illegal ballots. But did you notice on the form, if you weren't going to be the one to personally turn it in, you had to sign it and say who the person was who was going to turn it in on your behalf. So my wife did it for me, and I had to put her name on there, and she said people were checking it.
Where did she turn it in?
There was a ballot drop-off place near our house.
Well, I mean, if you take it into a early voting center or something, that applies. If you put it into the mailbox or a ballot box, that doesn't apply because there's no way for them to know.
They don't know who anybody is.
Right. So, I mean, look, it is, what did I just hear? So Taiwan has been in the news recently, right? So Taiwan they came in as they scored 84 out of 100 as far as being a successful democracy. They recently had an election with over 70% participation. And so it's like the model of democracy.
Aren't they going to be under attack, though?
Well, here's the thing,
by China?
right? I mean, it's
Chinese.
I mean, the Chinese claim Taiwan. And so if you as a government, if you recognize the government of Taiwan as independent from China, then you cannot do trade with China.
So we don't do that.
Well, we don't recognize Taiwan in that way. In fact, I think one of the first mistakes that Trump made when he became president was to publicly announce that he had called the president of Taiwan.
But isn't that really is that a mistake? in the sense, what's the right answer? Go back to your moral compass and what you say is, hey, there's right and there's wrong. Is it right that Taiwan is an independent, what do you call it? What's the word?
It's supposed to be independent.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of
China considers it part of a sovereign nation.
Sovereign nation, thank you. So is that the right answer, that they should be a sovereign nation?
Well, I mean, what about Hong Kong? So, I mean, here's what we've had for a long time. Two systems. Right?
Hong Kong was supposed to be, separate but equal.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be separate.
The two system situation.
But even Hong Kong, I mean, so I don't know anything about Taiwan, but Hong Kong was officially turned over from the British to the Chinese in 1997, I believe.
Oh wow!
And there was an end date to that period where they're supposed to be an autonomous nation. I want to say it's 2025 or 35, something coming up to where, hey, this kumbaya session is going to end.
Right.
Now, obviously, the shit on China is that they've kind of ignored a lot of that all along the way, and they're taking steps to undo that before the agreed upon date. But everybody knows that the end is coming.
They've certainly cracked down on Hong Kong, which puts the future of Taiwan, in question, right? But more than before. So
the people of Taiwan, was there some type of agreement, or did they just break off and say, we don't recognize belonging to China?
I do not know. I think that Taiwan has always been a sovereign nation, and that at some point China, just because they're right off the coast, China just said, hey, this is part of China. It always has been and always will be, and I don't think anybody's in a position to buck that. I mean, I don't see the United States going to war over China.
No. But when you were a kid and you got, whatever, your favorite pair of shoes and it said made in China or made in Taiwan, did you have a preference?
You want to know something? Up until I heard this story about how well democracy is working in Taiwan, I've always been here's three things that have always confused me. Hong Kong.
Where's Taiwan?
Well, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. What are they? Frankly, I don't know. Hong Kong, of late, especially there were the riots and things in Hong Kong, and they got that shoved down their throats, and there's backlash there. So nobody's doing anything, and nobody will do anything. So Hong Kong's a lost deal, and Singapore is China, right?
No.
Is it separate?
No, it's separate.
Is it a city or a nation?
Singapore. That's a nation.
Okay, and then Taiwan is a country, is a
for now,
unto its own. So I've always been a little bit unclear about what those things were. Was Taiwan a city in China? I didn't know, and didn't care.
So what's you said 70% participation in the election?
Yeah.
Is that fake news in the sense that they're trying to say that this is a story of success, but really, it's not, and they're going to be captured by China any day now?
Well, we're in a period of democratic recession worldwide, right? So
democratic recession.
Yeah. So what that means is that whatever the time period is that I can't remember what it is in the last 10 years or 2 years or whatever, more countries have abandoned democracy than embraced it.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think it's the worldwide move toward authoritarianism and autocracy that we saw evidenced here in the Trump election, that we see in Venezuela,
in the Biden administration,
with the Biden administration. No,
we do. We see it everywhere.
No,
what do you make of these fucking Australians? You see these Australians beating people in the street for not wearing masks?
I haven't really seen that.
Oh, so. It's like all over the news.
Is that the government or is that other Australians?
The footage is the police.
Oh, the police.
Police are literally strangling people and throwing them to the ground and beating them because they're not wearing masks. Because you can't have like even an assumption of one COVID case there, or they lose their shit.
I don't know. These. Here's a term that people are not probably too familiar with: biosecurity. So it's not something we embrace, but when you have island nations such as New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, different things, biosecurity gets to be a big deal, and so there's a mindset there that would play less well in the United States, right? It's like, okay, for the good of our country's biosecurity, you can't have this or that, or do this or that, or bring this or that into the country. Typically, this is going to be in reference to, invasive insects and invasive plant species and things like that. But I think that mindset is pretty ingrained in Australia. And so when they transfer that to something like the pandemic, the COVID thing, I can see where it might get a little out of hand, where it can get a little authoritarian.
And don't you think that mindset is a little outdated? It's very old school. It's not progressive to think that, like, for example, I was reading an article this morning about the U.S. has officially declared it was either 20 species extinct. And I started to read the list. It's like these fucking bullshit woodpeckers that you never heard of or don't care about, some other bird that no one's ever seen and that you just read about. It's like, I get it. Let old ideas die. We're going to have new species. We're going to have new things. And so when it comes to whatever, we have to take these steps so that we can't have one COVID case or one invasive insect come in here. Fuck, let's mix it up a little bit, see what happens.
For us, invasive insects and endangered species are very sensitive issues because of our core businesses that we're in. So, I think it has to be done on a case-by-case basis, right? I mean, you have to think of the good of the population in areas. I mean, we've seen things up in the San Francisco Delta where, really stupid actions have been taken by far left-wing environmental nutjob groups because some yellow-throated dick's gupper or something is being
something no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, that doesn't, and nobody.
We'll clearly never put a man on the moon.
Nobody gets. Yeah, we'll never put a man on the moon. Nobody really. But it's like you can't protect every species, right?
Including humans.
But then that's a slippery slope, including humans. That's a slippery slope where you're like, okay, so we don't really care about the mud scupper or something in the Delta up in San Francisco, but we're all going to be really sad if there are no more tigers or something, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Listen,
you're not going to be sad if
have you ever seen a dinosaur in real life? Have you ever seen a real dinosaur?
No.
Are you well adjusted?
Yes.
Are you not fucked up because you have never seen a dinosaur?
I surrender.
So if the children of the future never see a tiger, are they going to be mentally destroyed?
I watch and read a lot of science fiction, and one of the common themes in a genre of science fiction called Near History Earth is that all those things are gone, and that the people in those times have never seen them, right? And it's a sad scenario, right?
Is it?
Well, I mean, I think that the problem is that our environment benefits from the widest amount of diversity possible in the animal kingdom, and we just do not have the capability to understand what the downstream effects are of extinctions, right? And so I think that, look, are some extinctions inevitable? Apparently they are, right? There were no humans around in the day of the dinosaur, right. So we did not play a part. Here's a good thing about watching dinosaur documentaries. At no point, while you're amazed by the nature of it and the magnificence of the dinosaur, are you clubbed over the head by some 90-year-old naturalist telling you how the dinosaur extinction is your fucking fault because you're an inconsiderate piece of shit that likes to drink water out of plastic bottles that can never be disintegrated in the landfill. So that's good. So yeah, some things go extinct anyway, right? So
including humans, we're going to be extinct. Don't you think?
Well, I won't know, right? Either I'm dead or we're extinct.
But
either
the
way,
next intelligent life that either inhabits this planet or comes after us, and they say, there was this thing called the humans, the Homo sapien, sometime 1 million years ago, and
that's interesting.
We'll never see them. And we'll just be part of the history books like dinosaurs.
It's possible. Just something. I mean, do we have an extinction level event or
well, let's say it's climate change.
situation like climate change.
I saw that is other story in the news about if you're under 40, get prepared for the most catastrophic heat waves you've ever seen, because it's going to be part of your life that you've never experienced before.
That's very depressing, those kind of thoughts, right? I mean,
it's depressing and it's true, but it's also not the first word that comes to my mind, because like you said, you won't be around to see it. I won't be around to see it. It'll be hot. We'll find a pool.
You might.
No, shit's not going to change in that short order. And not for my kids. And if I'm lucky enough, if they have kids and I'm a grandpa, probably not for them either.
Oh, I don't know. I think you might be stretching that out a little too
No
far.
way.
That might be a little bit too much.
All this, there's certainly truth to the science and the rhetoric and,
let's
and
think
the
about
solutions.
Let's think about
but it's not as catastrophic as they're
saying. If you
saying.
have children under 5 years old right now, or in that general area, so let's think about it. They're 5 now in 2021. So in 2031, they're 15. In 2041, they're 25. Right?
Stop there. It's as fast as we can go on our heads.
There's a lot of shit that is supposed to happen by 2050, right? So
it's not. I'm going to tell you, it's not.
Well, I mean, some of it's going to happen unless we make some decisions.
It is going to happen, but it's going to be, I don't even want to use the word immeasurable, because of course the scientists are going to measure it, but it will be unnoticeable. If Malibu, beach is 3 more inches underwater, no one's going to fucking notice that.
3 inches. I don't think that's the
it
projection. Let's take something else.
If it's 5 degrees hotter,
yeah,
I'll just sit under a bigger shady tree.
Let's take something else. Great segue. So big shady trees. Let's talk about the sequoias in the Northern California. What is that? Arizona.
Have you ever
Nevada.
seen a sequoia?
No, but I'd like to. Right. So these are the biggest, oldest trees on the planet. These are the biggest,
like 100-year plus old, right?
Oh, they could be 3,000 years.
No shit.
Old. Yeah. So.
Shows you what I know.
The giant sequoias can be 40 feet around, right? And we have lost a bunch of them in this recent spate of fires in Northern California and up into the whatever borders us up in northern. Is it Nevada that borders us all the way up?
You got Nevada, yeah, and that where the fires
so
were.
it's the Nevada-California border where the Sequoia National Forest crosses the boundary. And up there, so these trees have lived through 100, maybe hundreds of fire seasons, right? Maybe even thousands. Some of them could get to be quite old. And and here's the thing: the sequoias can only reproduce through fire. So you need a certain amount of heat for the seed pods to open up on a sequoia and for them to drop seeds into the ground and then new sequoias to grow. So what's happening is we've lost hundreds of sequoias up there in the recent fires. They're still standing because they're 200 feet tall, right? So they don't have any branches that catch fire. So typically they withstand forest fires pretty well, and the naturally occurring forest fires or the fires that were being conducted by Native Americans before we got here in those areas were beneficial to the forest. They did a couple of different things. They obviously allowed the sequoias seed pods to open. They cleared low brush, which makes it makes it much more conducive for fires. But the other thing that happens is that that low brush, if it's not cleared by fire, becomes fuel, and then the sequoia seeds drop from the brush from the fires that do happen, and they grow too dense. So the forest becomes too dense. The giant sequoias are too close to each other, and so what happened is in the early part of our American experiment, fire suppression became the thing. The goal was to have no forest fires. This is before they understood.
Yeah, like Smokey the Bear shit?
Exactly, Smokey the Bear shit. That's exactly the time period. So that has changed the density and the makeup of the Sequoia National Forest. And so now when the fires burn, the trees, the trunks become their bark is a foot thick, right?
Isn't that crazy?
Yep. And so now those trees are dying. when these fires happen, they don't withstand the fire. They're so damaged, the trunk, that bark is so damaged that the tree dies. So now you have a 200-foot dead sequoia. That is sad to me, right? And I
sounds like a lot of log cabins that can be built out of that.
Oh my God, that's all good. But I mean, I think that that's climate change, right? I mean, that this is the downstream effect of things, and so I mean, I just think that I get it. I totally understand your position, and often feel that way, especially being in the pesticide type business, and so species extinctions for microbes and little insects and different things. But here's the problem. We just do not understand the downstream cumulative effects of these things. And, I don't want, I mean, it's not going to affect me, right? It's not going to affect my life whether sequoias live or die. I would like to be able to go see one sometime.
Go see one.
If I ever retire.
Maybe your window is closing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it is. A 40-foot around a tree with a 40-foot base would be pretty awesome. But right now, if I was to go up there right now in that part of where the fires are burned, what I'd see would be, 20 or 30 giant sequoias with completely blackened bark trunks and dead to boot, no foliage at all, and never coming back.
But my comments are merely just an acknowledgement that that's happening. Like, I'm not advocating for killing trees or
no, of course
whatever.
Not. Of course
but the thing is that all of these changes will continue to happen, and they will increase by some multiple, some X factor as time goes on, generation after generation that we won't know about. And it's going to take time, whether it's hundreds of years or thousands of years. Maybe humans, while we're still on this planet, can and will do things that will positively impact, the planet and or slow down some of these threats. I don't know.
Well, I think
all I'm saying is, if Malibu Beach is 3 inches further underwater, no one's going to give a shit.
You and I personally are mad at Malibu because they're getting up in our business, and we're sick.
And I try never to go there.
Malibu, Ventura, fuck them. Really, sorry guys.
Do you think? I was thinking about this too. It seems to me like you use the word anti-democracy kind of around the world.
Recession,
democracy, recession.
Yeah.
But doesn't it seem like government is a larger part of people's lives, not just here in the U.S., but all over the world, more so than we can really ever remember? And we talk about, we're into the thick of it. We're interested in the politics. We have always been, and we turned it into a podcast. And I understand there are people who are normies and don't really pay attention or give a shit.
Right.
But you kind of have to be, in the sense that government is just they're so entrenched in our lives and everything that we do. And maybe that's just me, but my feeling to it is it's more so than it's ever been.
Well, I think I'd have to agree with that. And so what that makes me think of is, sometimes, and I don't know if we've ever talked about it here, we need to concentrate more on the things we have in common than the things we don't have in common. I don't mean you and me. I mean all of us, right? And so what we're seeing is an autocratic, authoritarian drift across the world of world governments. And so, it depends how you're looking at it, right? If you're looking at it in a short window of time, it's pretty scary. I mean, when you see the amount of countries that are giving over to autocratic or authoritarian rule,
right.
It's scary. Now, but what's the root cause? And I think that the root cause, Travis, is that things are complicated now, and we know more things than we used to because of media and the access to information. And so I think what the tendency for people is, and I'm not going to say one country or another. I think all people, the tendency is when things get more complicated and more scary or less stable, I think the tendency for people is to want somebody to take a strong hand to the situation and keep it stable. And so I think that's why we're seeing, Because here's the thing, democracy and rule by the people can be messy. It's not clean cut. It doesn't always go in a straight line. And that can be perceived by people in different parts of the world as chaotic and dangerous.
I think you're right about that. And what really just boggles my mind is, I think all of that is what's happening, but why do people assume that that the government is gonna handle things better? Why put all your faith? Like, that's the opposite of how I think. When shit's going crazy and there's instability or whatever, my reaction is self-preservation. The only one that can navigate out of this mess is me. Nobody I trust more than me. Well, and there's nobody I trust less than the government.
I don't think that I think that there are a lot of people that just don't come to that conclusion, right? So I think what we're seeing is a divide among people. So I think there are a bunch of people that just want somebody to handle it and make it all right. And I do think that is a dangerous trend. I think as Americans, we kind of rail against that. I think that the phrase "don't throw the baby out with the bathwater" comes to mind here for me. So I get that your feeling that you just expressed, and we can probably tie that to other people who are less savory, I must say, like the Trump base or whatever. I think it's all kind of related, right? I think that what you're seeing in the United States is the rise of a lot of people who think that like that, but take it to an extreme. All government is bad. All of that stuff is bad. We need to keep sight that democracy in this government has been formulated after a lot of experience around the world with authoritarianism, and this is an experiment to see if we can do it different.
When are we going to stop calling it an experiment?
Well, because it's only a couple hundred years old.
I know, but at what point do we graduate?
I mean, didn't that go on for a couple thousand years?
Yeah, but did we ever call it an experiment?
Well, no, but I mean, but I think while you were in it, while you were a Greek citizen, you thought it was permanent, right? And I think that we have come to realize through a little longer view on history that these governments are not necessarily forever.
Well, I don't think any government is,
right? So,
including ours.
So it is an experiment, and we need to keep working. I mean, here's the thing: there's so many different ways to say this. You have to be vigilant. You can't just relax. You can't just turn your head and say, "Oh, I hate politics, and I hate this, and I hate the Democrats, and I hate the Republicans," and then use that as an excuse to be not involved. I mean, I think the fact that a democracy in Taiwan, sitting next to the biggest authoritarian government and threat in the world, is an example of one of the most successful democracies on the planet, is because the people are involved. And
but why are we not calling their democracy, which is younger than ours?
I think we are calling it. I think you could call it an experiment, right? It's one that has a bit of a foregone conclusion because it's next to what is, now possibly the most powerful. It's certainly the most powerful autocracy on the planet, right? And so, I mean, look at what's going on in China right now. I don't know how many people are following this, but there's a huge crackdown. And so they first started out with cracking down on what kind of tutors you can have your children use, right? And then to the information companies and to
cryptocurrency, now they're targeting the entertainment industry.
And they have decided that economic prosperity will not be more important than national interests. And so they look at things like social media, entertainment, different things they're looking at like how, do you know that they just put a pause on something at Facebook called, at Facebook, Instagram for Children.
Who did this?
Instagram, Facebook. It's owned by Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah. He did what?
They have put a pause on a project that Instagram has announced a couple of years ago. Instagram for Children.
That's a good idea.
No, it's a terrible
to put the pause on it.
Yeah, to put the pause on it.
Yeah.
but not going to get any clapping from me or high fives from me because you put the fucking pause on the worst idea you've ever had.
Well, they did it because China made them do it?
Well, no, but here's the thing.
Where are you going with this?
Well, so as our social media platforms and so forth run unregulated, right? The polar opposite is happening in China because they've looked at unregulated, uncontrolled social media and say, hey, this is bad for children. This is bad for the country. We're going to stop it. And they have. They've stopped it.
Yeah, and some of those examples are good, but
Right.
some of them are not.
Oh, well, I mean,
They're an
I'm
intrusion
not
on individual happiness and liberty.
I'm not advocating that we do what China does. What
Yeah, I
I'm
know
trying
you're
to
not.
say is that there's the opposite, right? There's the authoritarian thing. Some people think that's what they want. I mean, everybody that voted for Trump thinks that's what they want. They wanted. I mean, that's what's causing this lean toward authoritarianism governments around the country, around the world to happen right now. That's what's causing the democratic recession. I'm not saying it's permanent. I mean, things go back and forth, right? The pendulum swings, blah, blah, blah. So we just have to look at this for what it's worth. But it doesn't mean that democracy has to – we just need to keep working on it in this country without just giving up, right? And we need to look at what we have in common, right? We all want our liberties. We all want our civil liberties, right? But it has to be a balance between our civil liberties and regulations that are good. So in this example, China's answer to this is to just clamp down on it and cut it off, right? And they're just cutting, TikTok and WeChat and all this shit off at the knees. And there's no Facebook in China, right? So that's fine with me. But in the United States, we don't have to do that. We do need to have political oversight to create regulations for this, for social media, because it's not social media that's inherently bad. It's unregulated, unbridled social media that tends to drift toward terrible ideas like Instagram for children.
Yeah, but I think you're as you're describing kind of this balance, right, between
Right.
individual liberties and regulation, I see it more as a blend between individual liberties and yes, there's an element of what's good for society and for everybody, but I don't think the solution is with government. And I'll give you an example. Do you know on this Instagram for children, I would never need government to regulate that because my kids would never have Instagram for children. I just wouldn't allow it as their parent. So there is regulation there. There is a layer of protection, but it comes from me, not from the government.
Well, unregulated social media has so far proved to be a net negative for society, especially for younger
I
people,
think,
especially for
I know why
women.
you say that, and yes, there are examples of that, but I don't think it's all of that. I mean, look at all the businesses that have been created by social media and job opportunities and the positives that have been created out of that platform.
Well, I mean, out of the businesses that have been created out of social media, like Facebook, Amazon,
like a lot of
Instagram?
people rely on social media for sales to drive sales revenue to their businesses. That's how they network. That's how they advertise new products.
Right, but unregulated, right? That there are issues that so unregulated, that situation causes issues to come up that have not been dealt with yet, right?
But therein lies the kind of the moral question, which we alluded to a while ago, is at what level of risk are you willing to accept? And there's, ramifications. You called it a net negative. Yes, there are negatives, but at some point we can't make it totally pure where there's no risk at all with having that technology. So what's the acceptable
But there's
level
a huge
of risk?
difference between no risk and regulating those industries so that the risks are lessened. I mean, therein lies the challenge. I mean, I just don't. I get a feeling like if you can't, you're saying that, hey, if you can't flip a switch and make it risk free, then don't do it. I don't understand.
And I'm not saying that, but that oftentimes that is kind of what comes out of it. It's like we gotta control every piece of this. We have to control every movement. We have to make sure nobody gets hurt here, and that's just not a reality.
Well, look, I think that what I'm seeing in the society, in American society right now, is a pushback on that, a lack of a willingness to participate in it. Right? It's like, hey, it's too much trouble to stay vigilant and regulate things correctly. If we can't just turn it over to somebody and let them take care of it, where we don't have to be involved and it all magically happens, then nothing. Then don't regulate it at all. And if you want to see what happens when you remove all the regulation from a governing body, just take a look at Texas, right? I mean, they're out of fucking control. And, they killed 700 or 800 of their own citizens with their stupid non-regulation, removal of regulations from their power grid and so forth. You just keep looking to Texas, right? They're going to show you the way not to do everything.
Yeah, but that's a stretch, though. I mean, I get it, and Texas has a lot of disasters going on there, but they're not having bloodshed in the street. They're not, there's no civil war. I mean, yeah, right, maybe, but it's not literally on the verge of collapse. And I think there's not an exact cause and effect of the regulated or unregulated power grid.
The people that died during the winter in Texas through the ineptitude of the state government there and how they regulated and run their power.
But there's not a direct cause and effect there. You know what I do when it's cold? I start a fire. I put a blanket on.
When Travis sees my forehead go down on the microphone, he knows he's winning because I just don't have any comeback. So, I think all of that kind of ties together, Trav. I mean, I think that there is a place in the middle between no regulation and
that's true
and overregulation.
So let me ask you this: when this country's democracy or government collapses, not if, but when, in 10 years, in 50 years, in 500 years, will we consider that a failure? Will we consider it a failed experiment, or will we say that we evolved to something maybe better?
Well, I mean, I guess that remains to be seen. I mean, if the United States of America and our democracy, our republic and our democracy falls into ruin and chaos, I think it's a failure. If it evolves into something more refined or better, then that's great. I mean, I think that we just have to keep our eye on some of the things that are important, right? And so people tend to give up liberties in exchange for security. So as things around the world get more scary, less stable, you're going to see a real tendency for the public to allow or move toward authoritarian.
I know, that's so scary.
Well, I mean, that's just what I'm trying to say. So the problem with that is you can't abandon all government because you think that yes, that would be bad. If the people of the United States allow their government to become authoritarian, then then that's going to be sad. But it doesn't have to be that way. And the answer is not eliminate government. That's the problem. Because you said something earlier about, hey, let's dumb it down so people can understand it. Well, it's not a choice between no government or government. That's not the choice. But when you look at how things are becoming polarized, there's this group of people that want to say anything that is done by government is bad, and that's just not true. That's just dumb. I know that's not what you're saying, Travis.
And I think the biggest, that's not what I'm saying, but I think the biggest factor here is we've just become too big. I've said this before. Government is too big, and the people, there's too many people in this country. You all right?
We didn't tell this story, but so yesterday after leaving, I was in a parking structure, and I managed to trip and take a header. And so at this is a header. If I had done this when I was 20, and I totally could, I've always been a little on the clumsy side. I would have been fine, right? But now, ballpark 20 hours later, just because I took a header and fell down on the ground and, did my my tuck and roll. And
do you know how to fall? Do you know how to break your fall? And...
Yeah. You put my arm up, almost broke my arm. So here's the thing. Every muscle in my body hurts. So as we're sitting here and I'm leaning over toward the microphone, and then when I kind of move back to and try to raise my arms, every muscle in my goddamn body is sore right now. So
you want a cocktail? I can make you something to make you feel better.
Heroin. It would really be the best. Hey, I'm going to take a quick change of subject here. So something we've talked about in the past, and I'm watching a show on one of the streaming networks about 9 people that go to a resort is it 9 people? I guess it's 9 people total that go to a resort and they so Nicole Kidman is the main character in this. And so they go there, and then they are, without their knowledge, being microdosed with psilocybin.
Nice,
right? And other medications such as MDA.
Where is this? LSD. Can I go there?
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be in some place in Northern California called Cabrillo, where there's no such place. Well, it's actually filmed in, what a surprise, Australia, because it's Nicole Kidman, right? So I think it's about 9 episodes. So it's like 1 episode per person. They kind of focus a little bit more. Anyway, we've talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. And there are actually places you can go and participate in this micro dose.
I've told you
business,
this. It's
right?
like Jamaica, the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's not going to be here.
Costa Rica.
So very interesting that there's a whole TV show about this. And I don't know if they're promoting it or not, because I think it's a limited series, it's only X amount of episodes, right? So I think I'm going to watch the last one tonight. So I think we'll understand what the message is.
Well, here's the message. The message is, and I think I've seen previews. Is it HBO?
It isn't HBO. It could be Hulu. I think it might be Hulu. I just recently, through the very kind graces of our niece and nephew, they're sharing their Hulu.
Yeah, you don't want to say that out loud. They're going to crack down on that.
And or they're not. I didn't say that. Anyway, it's pretty awesome. I every day I move towards closer toward cutting the cord with AT&T, and because but Hulu is pretty interesting, so liking it. I have Netflix, I have Prime.
You're gonna have them all.
Hulu, I have the Peacock for what it's worth, not much. HBO and Hulu now, and those are the ones that and then the AT&T, whatever you call it, package, bundle, whatever. It's got
the shit nobody watches.
Local stations.
But here's the message of that show. The message is, I haven't seen it, but the message is that nobody should tell you what to put in your body. And that goes for vaccines, and that goes for drugs, and that goes for putting people in jail.
Should they tell you ahead of time if they're putting it in your body?
Well, that's questionable. What do they do in Taiwan?
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, on this show, when everybody figures out that they're being microdosed, nobody says stop.
Yeah, because they're all happy.
They're like, well, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. But
give me another one.
Well, if you don't want any more of it, you're perfectly. Yeah, no, go ahead and put it. Let's keep putting it in my smoothie, and then so it's pretty interesting.
So do you think that like the anti-vaxxers, that's what they're worried about? Is hey, they're going to be putting this stuff into us, and we don't know, and you see there is some element of. It's not a direct microchip or mind control. It's just a sedation, if you will, where we're now reliant on the government.
I can't say I have any further, deeper understanding of the vaccine resistance that we're seeing. We are second only behind Russia in the world.
As far as what?
As far as vaccine resistance. We have more vaccines.
People who will not get the vaccine?
Yeah, people resistance.
How can that be a thing in Russia? Can't Putin just say, you will get the vaccine? And
that's a good question. And I'm no Russian expert, but I think that I think that, many things there, although that's a full-blown autocracy and there's some facade of democracy, but it's not real. But I mean, I don't think they're down to controlling the like North Korea or something, right? The people there have to maintain some sustainable life, right? And
or perception of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in North Korea, it's different. It's like you might as well be in prison. I mean, it's so controlled, and they do it with hunger and they do it with fear.
You think those people are happy though? Like, do you think
North Korea?
Like they don't know what they don't know.
I don't think they're happy at all. I mean,
you hear stories about people from North Korea who, meet journalists or whatever from, the Western world, or they can somehow, travel on a student visa or something, and they're like blown away. They never knew that any of that shit existed because it's all screened and shielded, and they don't know any different.
Yeah, I don't think that
they've never seen the dinosaur.
I mean, if you were going to measure the happiness of North Korea population, I don't think that it would be high up there, right? Are there things they don't know about that that they're probably not unhappy about because
like
they
the family, the
they don't know a lot of shit, right?
They're it's like, what is it? The Uns, is that their how you refer to them?
The
Uns and the Ills, Kim Jong Un.
No, the dynasty.
The dynasty, which is now on its third generation.
I don't know. Kim Jong Un is on Jenny Craig or something.
Yeah, he's looking good.
He lost some weight.
He's still got.
I don't think that guy can ever look good.
Well, he's got to ditch the priest outfit and get a different haircut.
Thinner. Well, I mean, yeah.
You think the priest outfit is intentional? Because what I was thinking is it's very Jesus-like. It's very.
Is it?
Well, I mean, the people there, I think you're right. There are conditions that they're not happy with. There was a famine, in the 90s or something.
I mean, I don't think people.
But it's very religious. They worship that dude and the dynasty. They got like pictures of the family on in their houses, and to them, it's like fucking religion.
As far as you know. I mean, here's
do you think secretly somebody who's got the picture of the dynasty family on their wall is like, fuck this guy?
Oh, I think when somebody gets out of that country, you can hear. I mean, I've heard several people that have made it out and then talk about what it was like. I think they know that they're being subjugated and that they're fucked. I think when they get out, there's a whole bunch of things they find out that they didn't know. But I think it's all about fear and control, and it's just a really sad situation. Another failed nation-building project for the United States.
So even like with the whole Afghanistan thing in the last couple of weeks,
right. That's going on right now for
there's a hearing.
Reference, right?
Yeah, I don't even understand. This is so ridiculous. This is the shit about government, our government that I can't stand.
Dude, this is oversight, right? This is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, but if it's oversight, shouldn't it have happened beforehand? Look, I'm not criticizing.
Oversight happens after the
That's
fact.
Called Monday morning quarterbacking.
No, it's called oversight.
Oversight is we should have looked over this before we did anything.
Look, I think it's working the way it's supposed to work, and I mean, the only people that are taking any kind of beating on this stuff is the Biden administration,
right? And I think it's nonsense.
Well, I mean, I don't. For me, I think this is the essential function of a working republic and democracy, where the military is controlled by civilian oversight, and I think it's good to hear our military generals say, hey, I will follow any legal order from the civilian authority, right? If they give me illegal orders, I won't follow it.
I'm good with all of that. But what's the point of having this hearing after the fact?
Well, because this was, the withdrawal from Afghanistan was kind of a clusterfuck. Do I think it was ever going to happen without any loss of life or everything was going to be perfect? No, but I think we need to hear if it was bad, if there were bad consequences, bad consequences, right, for us being there, then we need to hear it. I mean, I think that what comes out of these hearings is that the military has not been as forthcoming to the civilian authorities over the whole 20-year period as they should have been. And I think the only way you establish that are through these oversight hearings and so that going forward we can make changes or make orders.
But the truth is that even if we make changes, it's irrelevant because the commander in chief, the sitting president, gets to declare all of their movements. He gets to say what we're going to do, and they got to follow all of his legal orders, right?
Yes. I mean, and then even there's a point, right? I mean, what General Milley is explaining in these hearings is that what he did was not done in secret, was done out in the open, and was part of he's not part of the chain of command. This is what is his official? He's the he's the chief of staff, or no, he's the joint chief of staffs or something. Whatever the fuck, I'm forgetting the name.
He's the Office of Inspector General.
No. He's, but here's the thing, right? What he did at the end of the Trump administration was try to keep things stable and calm with China, who could have very easily been led to believe that we were on the verge of attacking them, if for no other reason, just so Trump could cause a problem that would screw up the transfer of power. And so I think that, I mean, he obviously was not the biggest Trump fan ever. So of course he is the object of the current. Does
that make you feel better when you see like a high-ranking general who was not a fan of the former president, in this case Trump? Do you feel like, does that give you faith or confidence in the military that they can be neutral, if you will?
Well, I mean, neutral. I think that for me, I feel as if, as far as General Milley goes, that he performed his function. He's part of the chain of communication. He's not part of the chain of command, right? He couldn't stop an order or give an order that would start or stop a war. He could do the things,
tell people
that he
get under your desks.
Yeah, well, he could do the things that he did, that he's testified to, that, to try to stop a misunderstanding, between nuclear powers. I mean, I think that's part of his job.
But even still, so what I heard, the big takeaway was that, I don't know if it was one of these generals or three of them, the consensus was, hey, we were in favor of the withdrawal, but we would have left like 2,500 troops there or something like that.
Well, somebody asked General Milley specifically, right? He recommended to the Joint Chiefs of Staff recommended to President Biden that he leave 2,500 military personnel in Afghanistan,
and he didn't do
it. And somebody asked Milley, why didn't you resign when that became evident? He goes, that's not how it works.
Right.
It's the president makes these decisions. For me to resign because he didn't follow
my decision.
He didn't follow my advice. He goes, the military doesn't make these decisions. I gave the president my opinion, my advice, he's the military advisor to the president.
Who was that remark coming from? The question about why didn't you resign? Who asked that?
I don't know.
Was it a Republican?
Fox News.
It was a Republican, right?
I really don't know. I would imagine so.
Yeah. What I heard, I listened to a little bit of it. That was, I think, yesterday. Yeah. And it was like criticism about, again, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. Of course, they gave the recommendation to Biden. He's getting all the information from all the available sources, and he's got to be the one to decide. And I'm sure within his own cabinet, there were people on others, both sides of the fence who had different opinions. And he's got to be the one to go to sleep at night and make the decision. Whether or not he'll remember in the morning is another story, but he's got to make the decision. And so whatever. I'm not a fan of these, resigning because, you didn't like this.
That's what
it's
Milley
fucking
said.
Ridiculous.
Because that would be disrespectful to all the people in the military, to everything. He goes, but resignation is a political act.
It is.
Right? And he goes, that would not be fulfilling my oath, and so on and so forth. So I thought it was a great answer. I mean, I'm ready to vote for Milley for president. He's certainly not a Democrat. So I thought it was impressive. This morning I caught a few minutes before I took off with some more, the second day of testimony, where I saw, and I don't remember his name, but one of the other generals on the panel that's testifying, who took direct and total responsibility for the drone strike that evidently hit the wrong vehicle and killed the civilians and this stuff. He goes, hey.
Was it like Tesla software or what?
It was GameStop. It was Robinhood. So I mean, I don't know what else you can, what else you can ask for, right?
I mean, what about this? Isn't true transparency if they would have this hearing before the withdrawal so that we, the American people, could kind of know what the advice, like, for example, the number 2,500, I never would have thought, yeah, 2,500, that's a good troop number to leave in. This was a number that the generals thought would be appropriate. So wouldn't it be transparent and good for the American people to hear the strategy before it happens?
I don't
like, isn't that true oversight?
I don't think you can no, oversight is when you go back and review what has been done.
That's a review.
And then decide what if anything needs to be changed.
Like, to me, if I'm going to oversee something, I'm watching it as it happens, not after the fact.
No.
Maybe I'm hung up on the term. I don't know. I don't like it.
The role of the Congress is in the military is for the Congress to provide oversight for the military. That's typically going to be after the fact.
So it's a review.
It's a review.
Yeah.
Oversight is a review, just like, I mean,
and it's a complete waste of time because Biden can say, "Hey, yeah, I heard his recommendation, and we chose our way, and that's what we stand by."
Well, I mean, here's the value of it, right? What we know is that the military, the main military, the God damn it, the main military advisor to the President of the United States provided advice that he thought that we should leave 2,500 troops there, and that advice was not taken by the president. And guess what? That military guy did not shoot the president and take over the government.
And if we had done so, would it have made that much of a difference on what happened, which is essentially...
It would have been a disaster because...
Like, those people probably would have been slaughtered.
Well, that advice was predicated on an assessment that the earliest possible fall of Afghanistan security forces would have happened in late October, right?
Well, they missed the mark on that one.
That was incorrect intelligence that they got.
But
right?
even still, what difference does it make between 24 hours later and October? If the end result was that the Taliban was going to take over the Afghanistan armed forces and ultimately the country, the end result is the same. That's my way of saying, hey, you get no criticism from me. The end result is what we got.
Well, that's the difference between you and these fucking asshole Republican, senators or whatever hearing this was. The stupid questions that they were asking are obviously, just, they're not trying. Look, there's a difference between oversight and then using a hearing like this just to sling political arrows.
Yeah, right.
You're not doing so. When you're doing that, when you use a hearing for that purpose, then you are not fulfilling your responsibility of congressional oversight. You're just being a fucked up political hack.
But do you ever watch these? It seems like that's the theme of a lot of them. Yeah. Oh my God. It takes time off your life.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but for those people that say, well, both sides do the same thing, I watched a whole bunch of hearings, and it's not the same. So argue with me all you want about that, anybody out there. The horse shit that we see coming from Republican Senate and congressional hearing members is not the same as what you hear from the Democrats. There's a huge difference.
I'll give you an example. My favorite, this fucking loudmouth AOC, she's terrible. But I watched one time where she was, I think it was somebody from the banks. It was like maybe Wells Fargo.
Uh-huh. I see.
And God, what the hell was it? It was questioning about loans that Wells Fargo gave to certain businesses that were involved in doing something that she didn't like, or corrupt or whatever.
Right. That should be easy.
And so, but the implication is, like, it wasn't a direct loan to fund this particular program. It was a loan to this company who uses the funding to do a multitude of things, some of which you might have said that's appropriate, some of which you might have said is not. But the argument she was making is, hey, any money that you loan to these guys is wrong because they're bad actors, and you should know that. And more importantly, you're complicit in their behavior. You're just as guilty because you loaned them the money. I thought it's just bad rhetoric. That's false, and that's,
Well, look, I'm not saying that.
I'm trying to remember what it was, though.
I don't think that I'm saying that there's never an example of questions at a hearing from Democrats that you might not agree with, but I think that there's a huge difference between what you typically see coming from the Republican members of these at these hearings and what you hear from Democrats in general.
But the truth
AOC
is, like in her comments,
not representative of the norm.
But my point to all of that is her comments were not intended to get information or to seek the truth. It was just political posturing, which is the same thing that these Republicans were doing by questioning the Afghan withdrawal decision.
Well, just as wrong. I mean, if you want me to react to something that AOC said that that you've explained, I can only say, yeah, that doesn't sound productive.
Nobody can explain what she says.
I want to see hearings.
Nobody knows what she's talking about.
I want to see. Well, let me give you a better example of a current legislator that is awesome at this, right? You want to see Katie Porter in action, right? When she participates.
I don't know her.
She's a representative from California. And she's.
What does she do?
She's in the Congress. She's
overpaid hack.
So when she goes to a hearing with bankers, right, she brings a whiteboard and then she writes out the
she's
stuff,
one of those,
right? And she crucifies them, right? And it's everything a hearing should be. It's everything oversight should be. It's bringing up the people that you have oversight over.
What's wrong with banks?
And then examining them regarding things that they're saying that just aren't true, and then demonstrating it. So, is she better at it than AOC? Does AOC have an agenda? Does she take an opportunity? Do other more seasoned Democratic legislators that are on committees, do they ask better questions? I don't know, but I think in general, for anybody that's watched any of these hearings over the years, especially the last many years, you see that Republicans do their best to divert the purpose of these hearings, and I don't think they particularly succeed very well.
But yeah, they don't.
You have assholes like Grassley and Jim Jordan and different people that are just make this their life's work. I mean,
but even this imagery of this whiteboard, it's like, fuck off. Just tell me what's legal. Tell me what's not legal, and let me get the fuck out of here. Don't lecture me with your goddamn whiteboard bullshit.
Well, I didn't think you were going to love that example, but yeah. So I mean, I think the Afghanistan thing is unfortunate. Again, as I said the very first time we talked about this, in the long run, this is not going to make it or break it. It's not great for the Biden administration. It's a diversion right now from other things. It's unfortunate. I think the fact that, for me, all it demonstrates is a courage by this administration to do something that everybody knows was right. You want to quibble or you want a Monday morning quarterback about how it happened. Whatever. I don't think it matters. I think 70-something% of the American public were in favor of us getting the fuck out of Afghanistan. And the fact is that Obama and Trump were too chicken shit to pull the trigger on this, because there are always going to be negative political fallout for it. So once again, I think Biden just said, "Hey, I'm going to do it because it's right, and I'm going to own it," and that's the end of it. Did anybody want to leave? I mean, did we leave any American citizens in Afghanistan?
Well, remember, that was the whole thing.
They didn't want to leave.
Exactly. And it was a small number. What was the last number we talked about? 300 or something?
So I watched a Republican participant in the hearing this morning ask Milley, how would you put together an exit strategy that would leave Americans in Afghanistan?
That's such a bullshit question.
Right. Well, I mean, that's
we
what
didn't.
I mean.
They didn't want to go.
That's just... You just want to.
You saw the image of all those people hanging onto the plane. There was clearly more room on the wing. Yeah, there was room for them.
And, that was explained too. That was a couple of hours, right? After the Afghanistan security forces on the outside of the airport disintegrated, right? Then that happened. Order was restored mostly because of the participation of Afghanistan security force commando units that did not disintegrate, right? They're the ones that restored order inside the airport. That was achieved in a matter of hours. So, you want to fixate on an unfortunate occurrence during a chaotic situation. It's just not productive, and it's disingenuous. It's just very much,
and don't you think,
in keeping with the Republicans?
Even if, like right now, or 6 months from now, if those 300 people want to come out, we'll go get them. Or what if they're captured and it's known and they're on TV? Are we going to go get them?
You shouldn't have fucking been there in the first place.
But are we going to leave them there?
Well, I mean, if they didn't get out when they had the opportunity to get out, and that is apparently the case, right, for whatever, I mean, I'm sure some of them thought that Afghan security forces were going to hold the line for at least for months.
Really?
Right? Well, I mean, apparently.
Didn't we learn that those guys were actually very poorly trained?
Well, you didn't learn much of this. I mean, here's what the story seems to be on the whole Afghanistan thing. We were there for 20 years. We rotated everybody in and out of that country. The United States had almost no people that spoke the language, nobody that understood the culture. Even though we had a presence there for 20 years, we didn't have anybody in country for 20 years. That's not the case. And there was no political will to understand. So what you had was rotations of generals and people and civilian politicians and this and that, it's State Department people in and out of that country over 20 years, never achieving an understanding of Afghan culture.
We're just holding the line.
Right? And so then you have successive presidential administrations where the military is reporting back to them and to the Congress, right, that everything's okay, that the training's going great, blah, 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 because that is the culture for the military, right? Hey, you never say die, complete the mission. The mission is to train the Afghan security forces. This is what oversight is showing us, right? That the military did not report factually the situation regarding training and equipping Afghani security forces. And the consequence of that is an overestimation of their confidence, which is really the root cause of this incredibly chaotic withdrawal. And that's it. I mean, because, I mean, those are the things we need to learn. And that's the thing we need to now go forward and say, hey, we need to make it possible for military, for the generals to speak truth to power, not just tell them what they want to hear.
But is that something we truly learned, or don't you think deep down we always knew that?
That's why we should be learning it. I mean, we apparently didn't.
Like we talk about nation building all the time. Has there ever been a successful case of that? I mean, how did we not know?
In Japan.
But how did we not know this was going to be the outcome, regardless of what the military was reporting?
The outcome of what?
Of Afghanistan. In other words, you
mean when George Bush started the war there?
What I mean is all of these reports over the last 20 years of how well we were doing and how the success of this mission. Yeah. How did we not assume this is going to be the outcome?
I think I understand your question. I mean, I think what I guess my position is that the presidential administrations that have come and gone during the Afghanistan war were given incorrect information by a military that did not feel they could report failure to the power. And
yeah, I understand that. I'm just wondering, even if I got like a fucking rave review report, if I'm the president and I get feedback and reports of how well things are going, I'm going to go like, no, we're not. This is bullshit.
Well, I mean,
it can't be going this well.
Well, if the position is, hey, we shouldn't have started this mess in Afghanistan because we knew how it was going to end up. I mean, so then doesn't that fall fully and squarely on George Bush's shoulders?
And I'm not saying that either. I think the mission, well, first of all, I don't know what the stated goal was other than to what? Get bin Laden? Wasn't that
okay.
Wasn't that the primary goal?
Destroy Al-Qaeda's capability to command and control in Afghanistan.
With the primary target.
Bin Laden.
So once we did that,
well, that was 10 years. We did that 10 years ago.
I know.
So why didn't we then pull up the stakes? Because
that was on Obama.
Well, because what the military was telling Obama at that time was that, hey, we need to train the Afghan security forces. We need more time. They're not ready, but the training's going good, and with more time, we could do it. The assessment should have been made that, hey, once our immediate mission of degrading command and control for Al-Qaeda, whatever the fucking name is,
but you see,
and we killed bin Laden, we should have got out.
And even Obama knew that. He references that in his book.
Political courage that Obama did not.
I know, that's so disappointing. But he knew that those reports were either incorrect or he knew it didn't matter. He knew the end result was what it was going to be. And that was, like you said, 10 years ago. So 2011, that would have been his first term.
Well, let's look at Obama. This was an embattled president facing a completely obstructionist Republican situation. And, that was his call to make. He never felt that he could expend the political capital to pull out of Afghanistan. I'm sure he wanted to. He also wanted to close Guantanamo Bay, yeah. Right? Which is a fantastic movie on the streaming services about Guantanamo too. True story. I think that going back on some of these things is kind of, Afghanistan. Look, we did what we went there to do. We stayed longer than we should have. And the thing we need to learn from this is that nation building is kind of a fool's errand.
It is. And we've also learned that you can't Monday morning quarterback. You got to know this shit ahead of time and realize that the president's going to make the decision no matter what.
Aye.
Well, listen, your alarm is going off. I know you got to go. So have we had enough fun?
Through on the thing?
Have we had enough fun for today?
Yeah, this is good. It's hard when you miss a week. It's hard to capture everything. So that was good. I feel better.
We will continue the war on freedom and continue capturing ideas and thoughts.
All right, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.